Grace, mercy, and peace from God our Father and from our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Meditation today is based upon the epistle reading assigned for this Sunday from Romans chapter 5. I think it is very timely. Dear Christian friends, whether you realize it or not, in fact, the more I thought about that this week, the more I realized how much we really do this thing of comparing. We do it almost all day long when you think about it. Not only when we go to the grocery store and we compare name brands and store brands and find the best value, but we compare things on a daily basis. Compare the Cubs and the Cardinals. We compare which is the best way to get from here to there. We compare ourselves to others. Maybe what they have, what they earn, where they live. We do this kind of thing not only daily, but continually, all the day long, to inform our decisions and what we think would be best and right for us to do. How, as I mentioned to the children a moment ago, how do you suppose we compare to Jesus? Well, there was a comparison that happened in the gospel reading today between a Samaritan woman and Jesus. You heard it. Much more to compare and contrast than just him being a man and she a woman, he a Jew and she a Samaritan. This became abundantly clear in the conversation that Jesus had with her around the well. And Jesus said to the woman, "Have your husband come over here." Like Adam in the Garden of Eden, she kind of hides the truth. At least she thinks she does, from Jesus, and she says, "I have no husband." And Jesus sees through it. He says, "Yeah, you've had 5 husbands. And the man you're with now is not your husband." How would you and I stand in such a comparison before Jesus? We would fare not much differently than that Samaritan woman, in fact. We may think that we hide these private sins from Jesus, but we do not. We may successfully hide them from others, but he knows. He sees. And that should make us just a little bit uncomfortable. To know that God sees all that we are and all that we've done. That nothing is hidden from his eyes. That we don't measure up to God's expectation of us. And that, in fact, should worry us eternally. Because the bar is not set at good. I often say there won't be any good people in heaven. Only perfect people. Only people who match up to the righteousness of Christ. And certainly this Samaritan woman did not. Neither do we. Let me ask the question slightly differently. How do you compare to Jesus and his cross? See, the banner that hangs in front of us during the Lenten season is really half of the idea. It says, "He became sin for us." St. Paul says that Jesus takes on the sin of the world and he becomes sin. But that's only half of what St. Paul says in this context. He says, he became sin for us. Paul goes on to say, so that we might become the righteousness of God. A great exchange takes place on Jesus' cross. He takes all of your sin, all of mine, and he pays its price in full by dying under its weight. But in exchange, he gives to you his righteousness. He gives to you the very thing necessary to stand before an all-holy God. His righteousness, his perfection. And so how do you compare when you stand next to Jesus and his cross? Unbelievable as it is, you do compare. Not because you and I are sinless, we are far from it, but because our sin has been taken care of, because we have been gifted with the righteousness of Christ. We stand next to him, redeemed and forgiven, and in the righteousness that he gives us by faith. What joy and peace that affords us in our lives. Think about it. Now, Paul talks about here about dying for another person. Who would do that? You think about that. Who would do that? Now, a parent might die for their child, but since so few are put actually in that circumstance, I wonder when push comes to shove how many of us really would. Let alone die for someone else outside my family. Die for someone who's been hurtful to me. Die for someone who has been my enemy. That doesn't happen. Except on Good Friday. That's what Jesus did for you and for me. That is the height of his love for you and for me. It is a love that is beyond compare. But it is your possession and it is mine. And Paul says that makes a difference in the way that we live out our life. Did you hear it? Verse 3. He says, we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame. Hope does not disappoint. Suffering, he says, suffering brings rejoicing. The knowledge that though God doesn't send suffering in the form of cancer or other illness or old age or coronavirus, though God does not send it, he has allowed it in his love that is unsearchable and unknowing and incomparable. But when suffering comes, it is never without purpose. It is never without meaning. It never comes without God's hand upon us, using these sufferings as blessings in our lives. We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope never disappoints. Who among us has ever lived through anything like this before? What will tomorrow bring? It seems to be changing sometimes moment by moment. And I don't have an answer to that question about what will happen tomorrow. But what I can tell you is that the God of incomparable love, the God who loved us while we were still sinners and gave himself up for us on a cross, it is that God. It is the God of the cross who goes with you and me and will bring us through this, and through whatever suffering comes, he'll build character and endurance and hope and trust in a Savior who loves us incomparably and who's provided for us an incomparable eternal joy that we can only taste in the here and now. In the days that are ahead, whatever comes, you go through these days with the God of incomparable love and forgiveness and mercy, who will bring you and me through this, and ultimately and finally to the